Today is March 7th, 2026, and 24 years ago, I was born. I'm entering my mid-20s, and for someone who had an existential crisis about entering their 20s, I'm actually taking this whole mid-20s thing in stride. I'm ready for what the year moving forward has to offer, and I'm ready to leave behind my early 20s. 23 was eventful, both the good and the bad. The plan wasn't to have a crazy roommate who took out her relationship problems by screaming at me, nor was it the plan to end up with another terrible roommate straight after, where 2 months later I had to move again. After I was 2 for 2 with horrible roommate experiences, I decided enough was enough and I'd take my chances with the best roommate I could possibly ask for: myself. There's something so freeing about having your own space, knowing that when you come home, everything is just as you left it, knowing that there's not someone on the other side of the door ready to take their bad day out on you. So, here's a quick apartment tour. She's small with a few quirks, but she gets the job done. For an apartment that has a short-term lease, I still feel like I did a good job making it home. Sure, the bookshelf is in rough shape, but she did have her moment in my last house, and I can guarantee at my next house she'll look even prettier. Your eyes also do not deceive you. That is, in fact, my contribution to being a professional upstairs neighbor. This is my living room, and by that I mean my office. I do love my wingback chair, but boy, do I miss having a couch. Sometimes I still can't wrap my mind around the fact that I used to run my entire business out of a single binder and a small box. Now it takes up an entire room with 3 shelves full of products, with so many more in the works. One of my goals for the new year is to expand my online shop, offering more maps and various art. This was actually my goal a couple years ago, but it got sidelined thanks to the amazing commission opportunities that came my way. The novelty of being a published artist has not worn off, and 2 of the most exciting projects that I got to work on was For Something Wicked and Theodora's Tea Shop by Christy Ann Jones. Something Wicked ended up becoming a USA Today bestseller, and it's in Barnes & Noble. The fact that a piece of art that I drew is on the shelves of a store I've shopped at for years is wild, but not as wild as working on the map for Theodora's Tea Shop. I'd been watching Christie's channel since 2022 when it was just called Project Teacup, and that was before I was even taking map making seriously. So when she reached out asking me to draw her map, I couldn't refuse. These maps are extra special as both were and are being traditionally published. Something that started as a hobby has grown to sizes I never thought imaginable. I had my biggest shop launch ever last year with my How to Train Your Dragon map, where I grossed over 5 figures in 1 week. And with that, spent $5,000 on paper. I got to speak on a sold-out panel at Gen Con, the largest TTRPG convention in North America, with other insanely talented map makers, and meet so many people who I can now call friends. I got to vend at my first ever artist alley, a dream I've held onto since 2018, and had the best experience I could have asked for. There was something so special about seeing people come across and react to my art in person. I even got to meet one of you guys, which was the cherry on top. I've continued to be on R&R from flight attending for most of the year, but they did put my booty to work over the summer and during the holidays. I paid my dues though and got to take a few more personal trips. I unlocked a new country I'm obsessed with. It did really help that I got to prance around Scotland with a sword in hand and feel like I stepped right out of a fantasy novel. When there's a castle around every corner, it's hard not to fall in love. I even returned to the Netherlands for Ranger's Apprentice Day and Japan again, because I can't seem to stay away. Even when I'm not traveling, I feel like I constantly have to stay on the move. One of my favorite things I did this year was to be a beginner. As a longtime perfectionist, I can still find myself growing incredibly frustrated when new things don't go my way, or when I go to learn a new skill and I'm not magically the best at it. The only way to get over that, I've realized, is to throw yourself into the deep end and embrace it. So that's what I did. I can say for certain pottery was something that did not come naturally to me. After an 8-week course, I managed to successfully throw 2 things. But it led me to finding my love of pottery, and sure, that partly has to do with the fact that I love an excuse to put maps on things, but there's something about working with materials that comes straight from the earth that is so grounding. It truly is one of the most purest forms of making art because every step of the way, there's a chance that you'll ruin it all. And even in the end, after the pieces are made, there's still a chance you could just knock it off the counter and ruin it. Want to learn patience and let go of perfectionism? Go sign up for a pottery class. Trust me. I love hobbies that are a form of escapism since I ended up monetizing my biggest hobby, and since I work for myself, my brain is always wired 24/7 thinking about work. So, drums is another hobby of mine I recently picked up that is another form of doing just that. Learning limb separation is something that takes all of my focus, and I do nothing but focus on making my limbs do what my brain wants them to do, which is easier said than done. I practice once a week on a real kit with my teacher, and the rest of the time I'm at home on my e-kit, avoiding making my downstairs neighbor angry. A brief side quest worth mentioning is the stunt group I joined for a spell. Another hobby I would have continued to pursue if not for schedule conflicts and the Florida heat, if we're being honest. I'm not built for extended periods of time outdoors. But I learned how to fake fight with my fists and a sword, on top of learning how to real fight in taekwondo. I made it all the way to being a blue stripe, which, for reference, is halfway to a black belt. I would have continued this journey, but I did end up moving. And if you know anything about Orlando, is that depending where you are, Orlando is an hour away from Orlando. So I had to close that chapter and start anew. Turns out that some new chapters are just old chapters worth revisiting. I started my journey getting back into gymnastics after a decade, and out of all the things I've claimed are life changing, this may be the pinnacle. I grew up as a competitive gymnast, and it was something that dominated my childhood. It was my first love and what I thought would be my future. I don't have many regrets in my life, but leaving gymnastics will always be one of them. Yet, on the same token, if I had stayed, I think I would have grown to hate the sport. So, getting the chance to return to a sport I have such a deep love for means that I can change that regret into something new. I get to fulfill my childhood dream of having a floor routine set to a Wind Waker song. I got to prove to myself that I am strong enough physically and mentally to get back most of the skills I had as a kid in just 4 months. Which, by the way, everything is so much more terrifying when you're the one paying for medical and your brain is much more developed. What do you mean I'm doing back handsprings on a 4-inch wide platform? That's insane. I originally started this journey to see what I could do, and competing was something that I thought would be neat but impossible. But I, after a decade almost to the date, got to compete in gymnastics again. With, might I add, the best team a girl could ask for. I love my little flip flops. With my life constantly changing and in chaos, the one constant I can always count on is the people around me. My family, who will drop everything to come help me move, from my friends I make on the internet and then get to meet in real life, to the talented artists I get to connect with, to the girls on my gymnastics team willing to drive 3 hours just to support me vending at an anime convention when it's totally not their scene, to my parabatai serenading me with Sabrina Carpenter songs, and even all of you with your words of encouragement through the screen. I am so lucky to have all the love I do in my life, and I will forever be grateful for it. As always, I've changed a lot. I mean, I hardly even flinch when I see cockroaches these days. I don't know, man. Florida does something to people. But I'm also still the old me. The old me that loves Ren fairs and using any event as an occasion to dress up. The old me that will always have her nose stuck in a book and recommends Ranger's Apprentice to everyone who breathes in my direction. The old me that has a tattoo addiction and truly thinks it's a shame that my newest and favorite tattoo is on my back so I don't get to stare at it 7 days a week. The old me who still jams out to her favorite songs in a volume that is probably the reason my hearing is garbage. The old me who will continue to make videos even if I don't have the same time to do it as I once did. I'm so grateful to the life I live, even with all the challenges life loves to throw my way. But if I continue to live a life surrounded by my friends, saying yes to the opportunities that come my way, and the constant desire to learn, then I think that's a life worth making memories in. Here's to being 24.